Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at Lachine Soninke.
Okay.
And it's this website that really blends Soninke culture and political commentary.
Interesting.
Like it's
Right.
it's kind of this online crossroads
Yeah.
where we can look at things like Mauritanian politics,
Yeah.
the Soninke community in France,
Mm-hmm.
and even the influence of people like Ousmane Sonko.
I see. Yeah. And Lachine Soninke, it's fascinating because it doesn't shy away from some really complex issues.
Right.
You know, one of the first things you encounter is an interview with Biram Da Abid.
Oh, wow.
And he's a prominent voice in Mauritanian politics.
Uh-huh.
But he's alleging some serious irregularities with their recent presidential election.
Really?
Yeah, he specifically points to Mohamed Ould Ghazouani's victory as potentially fraudulent.
Now, for some of us that aren't as familiar with Mauritanian politics, could you give us some context for these allegations?
Well, you know, Mauritania, unfortunately, has a history of political instability. Coups and authoritarian rule have been recurring themes there.
Yeah.
And, you know, while they've made some strides toward democracy,
Mm-hmm.
there are still some concerns about how fair and transparent their elections really are.
Okay.
Now, Abid is claiming things like vote rigging. He's talking about suppression of opposition voices.
no.
And even manipulation of the electoral system itself.
Sounds serious.
Oh, these are very serious accusations.
Yeah.
They really reflect some of the deeper tensions that still exist within Mauritania's political landscape.
Makes you wonder what could happen if these allegations are actually true.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I mean, what does this mean for democracy in Mauritania?
Well, you know, it could lead to more instability,
Right.
potentially even more protests,
Right.
and we could see further erosion of public trust in the government.
Oh, for sure.
Now, the international community might react as well.
Yeah.
You know, maybe with sanctions
Yeah.
or diplomatic pressure. It's definitely a sensitive situation.
High stakes.
High stakes.
Yeah. It's interesting how Lachine Soninke puts this tense political stuff right next to the Soninke community's cultural activities in France. They have this whole article about a football tournament,
Yeah.
and it was organized by the Association des Jeunes Soninkais de France.
Right.
What a way to bring people together.
It really is. And it highlights the many sides of these diasporic communities.
Yeah.
You know, they're navigating how they connect to their homeland while building a life in a new country.
Makes sense.
Events like this football tournament, they're about more than just the game.
Right.
They're a way for the younger generation to connect with their heritage,
Yeah.
build community bonds, and celebrate their identity.
I feel like sports often have that role, like bridging cultural divides.
It's true.
What other ways does the Soninke community in France stay connected to their roots?
Whoa.
I'm looking at Lachine Soninke and I see they mentioned something called Africa à Montreuil.
Yeah. Africa à Montreuil is led by Bouba Fane,
Okay.
and it focuses on fostering cultural exchange.
How so?
You know, things like art exhibitions,
Nice.
music festivals, and
Yeah.
educational workshops.
So it's another example of how the Soninke diaspora are preserving their culture
Yeah.
while contributing to France's cultural landscape.
Exactly.
It's just fascinating to see how they tie together this cultural identity and political awareness on Lachine Soninke.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of powerful figures, the website also brings up the recent recognition of Ousmane Sonko. You know, the Senegalese politician
Yeah.
with the Miriam Makeba Award.
Okay.
And this isn't just any award. It
Right.
carries a lot of weight, especially with Sonko's political views.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Could you remind our listeners about Miriam Makeba and why this award is so important?
Yeah. Miriam Makeba, they used to call her Mama Africa.
Right.
She was a South African singer and activist.
Right.
She used her voice not just for music, but as a real force against apartheid.
Powerful.
She became this symbol of resistance, a voice for the voiceless.
Okay.
The award named after her recognizes individuals who have that same spirit,
Yeah.
that activism and commitment to social justice.
So this places Sonko among some really prominent figures fighting for social change.
It does.
What impact could this have on his career,
That's a good question.
especially with his strong Pan-Africanist views?
Well, winning this award could definitely raise his profile, both in Senegal and internationally.
Oh, interesting.
And, you know, this is particularly significant because he's been very outspoken in his criticism of the Senegalese government.
Right.
And, of course, his advocacy for Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
You know, that's a movement that emphasizes the unity and solidarity of people of African descent all over the world.
Okay.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
It resonates with many, especially those who see it as a path towards greater political and economic freedom for the African continent.
Lashane Soninke seems to be really carefully selecting their content
Yeah,
to engage with these intertwined issues.
it's true.
They put cultural celebrations right beside political critique, and they give a platform to a variety of voices.
They do.
We have so much more to discuss
Yeah.
because we haven't even touched on some of their other thought-provoking articles.
Right.
What else caught your eye?
Well, there are a few other pieces that I think are worth talking about.
Okay.
For example, they highlight former Senegalese President Macky Sall's criticism of the international financial system, which is particularly relevant given the state of the global economy right now.
Right. And then there's that article about the debate around that film project,
Yes.
the one related to Soninke history.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's some disagreement about how their histories should be portrayed, which brings up interesting questions about representation and who gets to tell the story.
Absolutely.
And then there's the spotlight on Samuel Eto'o, the amazing football player,
Yeah.
and his work using the sport for development in Africa. And of course, there's Anna Babakar.
Yes.
She's providing some really insightful commentary on where Senegal's headed.
Right.
Lashane Soninke is creating this space for a wide range of topics
Yeah.
and opinions.
They are.
It's like they're capturing the African experience as a whole. The politics, the culture, the hopes, the challenges. It's all woven together.
Yeah.
This deep dive is already proving to be so enlightening,
It is.
and we're just getting started.
We are. It really is how Lashane Soninke brings together so many different parts of the Soninke experience, like in Africa and in the diaspora.
Like building bridges, right,
Right.
across continents.
Yeah.
Connecting people through this shared heritage and engaging in these really important conversations.
It is.
But let's go back to those election fraud allegations in Mauritania.
Okay.
We talked about the possible consequences. But what are some of the things that might make their democracy so fragile?
That's a really good question. As we mentioned before, Mauritania has this history of military coups, authoritarian rule,
Yeah.
that has definitely had an impact on their journey towards democracy.
Okay.
There have been problems with things like
Yeah.
limited press freedom,
Right.
restrictions on civil liberties, and accusations of corruption in the government.
Nice.
All of these things can create an environment where election manipulation's more likely and the public's trust in the system just disappears.
It's like a bad cycle.
It
How do you
is.
break free from that?
It's tough. Building a strong democracy takes more than just elections.
Of course.
It needs a dedication to transparency, accountability,
Yeah.
a strong civil society,
Right.
and respect for the rule of law.
Right.
It also needs a change in their political culture,
Okay.
moving away from those power struggles
Yeah.
and toward a more inclusive, participatory approach.
So something like that Soninke football tournament in France, it might seem totally separate from these political issues in Mauritania,
Right.
but it shows a really important part of building a healthy democracy,
Or how so?
fostering that strong sense of community and shared identity.
Absolutely. When people feel connected to their community
Yeah.
and they care about its well-being, they're more likely to get involved and hold their leaders accountable.
Right?
And that sense of community, it can go beyond borders.
For sure.
Just like we see with the Soninke diaspora.
That brings us back to Ousmane Sonko and the Miriam Makeba Award.
Yeah.
His Pan-Africanist views really connect with that idea of solidarity across borders.
It does.
But for anyone not completely familiar with Pan-Africanism,
Sure.
can you explain some of its main ideas?
Of course. Pan-Africanism basically envisions a united Africa,
Oh.
free from what colonialism left behind and exploitation from outside.
Right.
It's a movement based on the shared history of struggle and resilience among people of African descent all over the world. It calls for self-determination, economic empowerment,
Yeah.
and reclaiming African narratives and cultural identity.
So, recognizing the shared past, but also working together for a better future for the African continent.
Exactly. It's about understanding that African nations and their people are connected,
Right.
and that working together is key to real liberation and progress.
It makes you think about how Sonko's political activism fits into that bigger picture. Getting the Miriam Makeba Award,
Yeah.
he's recognized for trying to challenge the way things are.
Right.
And push for meaningful change.
Exactly. It acknowledges his bravery in speaking truth to power,
Yeah.
fighting for social justice, and mobilizing people around this vision of a more just and prosperous Senegal,
Okay.
and really a more just and prosperous Africa.
And Lachane Soninke, they don't shy away from controversial stuff either.
That's true.
Like that debate about the film project on Soninke history.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about this controversy?
Well, the article doesn't go into the details of the debate,
Okay.
but it hints at different views within the Soninke community
About what?
about how their history should be shown and who has the right to tell those stories.
Right.
This is a common tension when we're talking about historical narratives, especially for groups who've often been excluded from shaping how they're represented.
Makes sense. It raises questions about who has the power,
It does.
ownership,
Yeah.
and authenticity. Who gets to choose which stories are told and how?
Exactly. It's about decolonizing history, taking back those narratives,
Right.
and making sure that different voices are included in telling their own stories. And Lachane Soninke giving a platform for this discussion, that's really commendable.
I agree. It shows they're dedicated to encouraging critical dialogue within the community,
Yeah.
even when it's challenging or makes people uncomfortable.
Absolutely. It's about having a space for open and respectful debate where different viewpoints can be heard
Yeah.
and considered.
So we have this website,
Yeah.
Exploring Mauritanian Politics, celebrating the Soninke diaspora,
Right?
and tackling these complex issues like historical representation. And they're spotlighting people like Ousmane Sonko and figures like Samuel Issou, who's using football for social change. It's amazing how Lachane Soninke covers such a variety of topics,
It is.
weaving them all together to create this rich tapestry of information and perspectives.
Impressive.
But before we go too far praising the website itself,
Sure.
let's step back and look at the bigger implications of what we've discussed.
Okay.
What does Lachane Soninke tell us about how digital platforms are changing narratives and mobilizing communities?
That's a great question. We're seeing a change in how people get and share information, especially younger generations.
Oh, yeah.
Online platforms like Lachane Soninke are becoming more influential in shaping opinions,
Right.
encouraging discussion,
Yeah.
and getting people involved in shared interests and causes.
It's like they're creating this virtual town square where people can connect, share ideas, and have meaningful conversations.
Exactly. And this is really powerful for diaspora communities
Right.
who can use these platforms to stay connected to their homelands, preserve their culture,
Right.
and build solidarity even when they're far apart.
Makes you wonder what's next for these online spaces.
It does.
How might they become even more impactful in shaping political discourse, cultural understanding, and social change?
That's a fascinating thought. But before we jump into the future of digital platforms,
Yeah.
I think we should revisit the main themes and takeaways from Lachane Soninke.
Okay.
What really stood out to you?
Sure. As we wrap up this deep dive into Lachane Soninke,
Yeah.
I'm really struck by how much it shows about how connected these issues are.
It's true.
We went from Mauritanian politics
Right.
to the Soninke diaspora, and through it all, there's this sense of resilience and commitment to progress.
It's pretty remarkable how they've built this platform that feels both global and also very connected to the Soninke community's specific experiences.
It really is, and it says a lot about the power of independent media, especially giving a voice to those who are often marginalized or overlooked.
Right.
What do you think about the role of platforms like Lachane Soninke in the wider media landscape?
Well, I think they offer a really important alternative to the kind of one-sided stories you often see in mainstream media.
Makes sense.
They provide a space for different voices, for more nuanced discussions, and for challenging those in power.
It's like they're democratizing information,
Yeah.
letting communities control their own narratives and have conversations on their own terms.
Exactly. And that can be so empowering.
Yeah.
Especially for groups who've historically been silenced.
Right. As we finish up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways that stand out to you from our look at Lachane Soninke?
Well, I think it really emphasizes how important it is to seek out diverse perspectives and to think critically about the information we're getting. We live in a world with so much information, But we have to be careful about the sources we trust and the stories we believe.
Okay.
Lashane Soninke shows us that there are these alternative spaces where we can find more balanced and authentic views on complex issues.
It's like a call to action.
It is.
To be more aware of the information we consume and to actively look for sources that challenge our assumptions.
Yeah.
And help us understand more.
Absolutely. And I think another key takeaway is this interconnectedness of issues that seem totally separate at first.
Lashane Soninke smoothly blends cultural events with political analysis, historical reflections, and commentary on what's happening today.
It's true.
It shows us that these aren't separate things, but rather parts of the human experience that are woven together.
It's a good reminder that everything's connected. And to understand something complex, we often need to look at a whole network of factors.
Right. And lastly, I think Lashane Soninke leaves us with this feeling of hope and potential.
Yeah.
It shows the strength and creativity of the Soninke community, both in Africa and around the world. It highlights individuals working to make things better, to fight injustice, and to build a better future.
It's inspiring to see how people use digital platforms to make their voices heard, connect with others, and create positive change.
It really is.
And it makes you wonder what other amazing initiatives are out there.
Just waiting to be discovered.
That's the exciting part of exploring. There's always something new to learn,
Yeah.
new to find, new to be inspired by.
So to our listeners who are fascinated by what they've heard today, we encourage you to dive deeper into Lashane Soninke.
Yes.
Check out their website.
Yeah.
Engage with their content.
Yeah.
See how they're shaping narratives and building a vibrant community online. You might even be inspired to create your own platform, to share your views and connect with like-minded people.
The possibilities are endless.
They really are.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation alive.
And on that note, our deep dive into Lashane Soninke comes to an end. We hope you enjoyed the journey. Until next time, stay curious.